This evening's speaker is Dan Quigley. And for those of you who came in a little bit later, Mike Walker emailed and he's not feeling well this evening. So he handed the reins off to Dan, who is the service manager?
No, I'm the support director.
Support director.
Right.
So he knows them inside out as well. And he's also a very active ham. So I am going to, do you need to do screen sharing?
I do.
Okay, I will make you a co-host right now.
Okay.
And I will spotlight you so that you show up for everybody.
All right.
Real big. And then I will mute myself and I will turn it over to Dan.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Paul. And it's a pleasure to be here. I'm kind of a stand-in here. So you're going to forgive me. I haven't done this presentation to as nearly as much as Mike has. In fact, I think I've only done it once. But I give technical talks at Ham Show. There's a number of YouTube videos. My background is in engineering, software and hardware engineering, and I am the director of support here at Flex Radio. So I get to talk to people who have both have problems and have questions. So you know, I'm certainly open to any questions that you have as I go through the presentation. I would appreciate it if you have a burning question that you just can't wait to ask, just go ahead and ask the question, and I'll answer it. But if you hold the questions to the end, I think you'll find that in many cases the questions that you may have will be answered. So I mean, this is a bit of a commercial. That, you know, we talk some technical. There's some technical aspects of SDRs in general and sort of how things work. But I'll be spending some time going over the Flex product line as well. So if you have any questions about that, please don't hesitate to ask. And at the very end, I have some promo codes that you can use for ordering a product if you wish. Our service is typically within about 5 days right now. And we don't have a backlog on any of our products other than the tuner and the Maestro, which you'll see here in just a little bit. So with that, I'll get going. And I got to share my sound here because I have some cool little videos that I'm going to be playing as I go through this. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
And you see the presentation? And that's
You're an insert.
I see chroma cam.
oh, okay. So I am not on a sec. Share screen. And how about this?
That looks better.
That looks better. Okay. All right. So let me get started here. So without further ado, Mike is sick, and we all wish him well. So very first question that we typically get is, what can I do with my Flex radio that I can or can't do with other amateur radio transceivers? And the answer is you can do anything that any transceiver can do, plus a whole lot more. You know, you can rag chew, you can build an SO2R station that stands for single operator 2 radio station with just one radio, by the way. You can do just about any digital mode. You can be an SWL if you wish. You can work satellites. You can do weak signal microwave. You can write your own user interface. And I think one of the things that surprises people is that they aren't really expensive. That our entry-level product retails for $24.99. So another question we get is, how complicated is an SDR? Well, it's in fact incredibly easy, because our engineering team has done an awful lot of work behind the scenes to make it easy for you. So for those of you that are in the analog world, if you wanted to listen to two bands on the same antenna at the same time, what would you have to do, right? So you'd have to have at least two receivers. Now a lot of transceivers today at the high end of the market will have a separate RX receiver, but not all of them allow you to receive off of the same antenna. You'd have to either Y off the antenna or do jump through some other hoops to do that. With our radio, it really is a point and click operation. In fact, our CTO Steve Hicks, N7HQ, we talked to him once about the effort that went into building the antenna switching and when they were designing the product. And I won't read all of this for you. You can certainly read it later, but he really felt that it was important to make it a point and click operation, make it really easy for people to select which antenna they want to use, for which receiver, and there are multiple receivers in RSDRs. So they really spent an awful lot of time. In fact, it ended up being about 11,000 lines of code to make it really seamless for people to use under all the different possible combinations of antennas that you can put to the radio. So it's not a simple problem, but we make it simple for the end user. And I think there's an old product adage is making simple is hard, and it truly is. So I think most everybody on this call will be familiar with what a superhet receiver is. So super heterodyne, of course, it really is. You have an RF amplifier stage, you have some sort of a mixer where you have a local oscillator. It gets the sum or the difference of that goes through some IF amplification and filtering, and finally it's demodulated to an audio amplifier. That's the design that's been around for 100 years now, and it's definitely served us well. But what's replacing the superhet across the entire spectrum of HF radios, and by that I mean government and commercial and amateur, is direct sampling technology, which is this is just a note about why mixers are bad. I should say they're nonlinear. Everybody knows that you can get there's additional noise, you can have images, you can have a lot of different things. Direct sampling radios don't have all of that, because everything basically stays in the digital domain from effectively the antenna all the way to where it gets reproduced into audio. And so it appears from the outside to be the same as a superhet radio. It replaces all of the traditional parts like the mixers and RF, but there's no mixing. There's no local oscillator. There's no IF. It basically digitally samples in a piece of spectrum. And in our radios, it's basically from 30 kilohertz up to 54 megahertz, and then up to 2 meters in some of our models. It samples it all at one time, and it collects those samples, and then we perform some math on that stream of digital data to turn it into something that's useful for us as amateur radio operators. So it truly does not leave the digital domain from the point that it gets converted from an RF, a weak signal RF coming in the receiver, and to the time that it actually ends up in your ears or into some digital mode processor that's processing a digital one. Now, the transmitter side is really not mentioned here, but it works the inverse of that. So we do all of the building of the signal is done in the digital domain, and then it goes through a digital to analog converter and directly to RF, which gets amplified and filtered and finally makes its way out to the antenna. So So truly everything is in the digital domain, and that's really, really, really important. And most people don't realize it, but they already own their an SDR. In fact, I saw Paul using one just a moment ago, and that was his cell phone. So the cell phone is an SDR. You know, from the modern cell phone is all SDR. So so what is really some of the game changers here? Well, because we're in the digital domain, we don't have to worry about pesky things like Q in filters, and we don't have to build you know, stack filters to get adequate you know, filtering. We can digitally manipulate the signal and do literally brick wall filters from anywhere from 50 hertz wide up to you know, 10 kilohertz and beyond, actually, for both RX and TX. So it is, you get 90 dB, 80 dB worth of filtering, and it is straight up and down on a specific frequency. So it literally is a brick wall. We can have multiple main receivers, and because some of our radios have multiple spectral capture units, which is the unit that does the actual conversion from weak signal to the digital domain, we can be receiving multiple receivers off of multiple antennas. We can do wide noise blanking, so we can look at the entire RF spectrum if we want, from 30 kilohertz to 54 megahertz, and have that inform our noise blanker or noise blanker algorithm more likely. We can get really, truly amazing AGC performance because, again, it's in the digital domain, and we can use the magic of math to manage the AGC. We have something like controlled envelope single sideband, which will give you roughly 3 dB more RF out in a single sideband transmission. I'll talk a little bit about that. Since it doesn't leave the digital domain, we can go directly from a you know, things like FT8 and other digital modes are processed completely in the digital domain, so you don't even need to hear them in many cases. And we can also have built-in bandpass filtering in radios for when you're operating single operator to radio mode, or, you know, and for field day events. And we have a neat little demo here about the field day that I'll show you here. So there's some new terms. Incidentally, the person in the middle of that photo is our new CEO, Matt Youngblood. He is the son of Gerald and has just recently taken over the reins of CEO of Flex. So first is a slice, right? A slice is just a piece of spectrum. A slice of spectrum is the best way to think of it. We call it a slice receiver, but it really is what would some people would call like the audio passband for a particular you know, point that you're trying to receive from. Now, Flex radios can have either 2, 4, or 8 slice receivers operating independently, depending on the model. And then the other is the spectral capture unit, which is the front end of the radio. It's really what connects to the antenna. This is where the conversion from the RF domain into the digital domain occurs. And Flex radios have 1 or 2 SCUs. With 2 SCU radio, it operates like 2 independent radios. This is one of Mike's euphemisms. Your eyes are spectral capture units. Is a good way to think of it. So since the radio has either 1 or 2 SCUs, the SCU is the actual receiver. In our model 63, 64, and 6500 radios, there is 1 SCU, and there are 2 SCUs in the 6600 series and the 6700. The SCU handles RX and is really the part you connect to the antenna. With one SCU, you can use only one antenna port at a time, although you can switch the antenna port to multiple receivers, and that all happens within software. With two SCUs, you can use two different antenna ports at the same time, and you can, of course, RX on both. So the other one here is an FPGA, field programmable gate array. That is kind of the brains of the unit. We do have a DaVinci microprocessor on board in our radios, but the FPGA is the one that does a lot of the signal processing. The client is what you would connect to from outside the radio. The CAT is, if you're familiar with Kenwood CAT or the CAT protocol, we kind of expand on that. We have virtualized CAT, we have virtualized serial ports, and they can be given an attribute like a CAT or other serial functions can be ascribed to them, and you can have multiple pieces of software connect to a slice, for example. DAX is virtualized digital audio exchange. It's used to send audio to and from the radio and your and any program that would use that, like WSJTX, for example, requires that you connect it to some sort of a sound card interface. Well, DAX, we have drivers that we install on the Windows PC that are virtual sound card drivers, and you can take one of those channels and attach it to a specific slice receiver and wire that directly into the WSJTX program. The Flex Radio 6000 series supports 2, 4, or 8 slices depending on the model. The slice has the ability to receive from anywhere from in a spectrum of 30 kilohertz all the way up to 54 megahertz. The 6700 adds 2 meter coverage. Additional slices have access to the same spectrum at the same time. And the all spectrum waterfall and slice and processing occurs on the radio. And that's really important, because one of the myths about an SDR is that you have to have some monster PC that does all the number crunching in order to manage all the signals, or get signals out of the data streams that are coming from the radio. Now, in some architectures that's true, but in the Flex 6000 series, the majority of the processing occurs on the radio itself. So you don't really need a super duper computer to run the client on and operate the radio. In fact, many people do it on an iPhone or on a laptop or on a tablet PC. You can get some really great performance on it. The only time you need additional processing is for the digital mode software that you may want to use, like if you're doing RIDI or FT8 or some of the digital modes. That software does not run on the radio. It runs on the laptop. All the spectrum, waterfall, slice processing, all of that is processed on the radio. In fact, if you were to look at the source code for our client, really the only thing that the client is doing is just displaying the information it gets from the radio. It's not doing any major math at all on it. It's just converting what it gets from the radio and displaying it for the user. A client, that is the user interface. We have many different clients. What you're seeing at the top picture there is a Maestro, which is a standalone control head, and I will kind of focus in on that in a slide that's coming up. Smart SDR for Windows, which is the software that the vast majority of our customers use. We have Smart SDR for iOS for the Mac, and we have another Mac variant, Dog Park SDR. And there are other versions out there. There's one for Linux that's that's under development right now. So if you have virtually anything that you would need to use or have available to use for a client, you can use with our radios. You don't need a specific version of Windows, although we do prefer Windows 10 or 11. So it works with all of our radios. All the 6,000 radios work. So if you don't need to match a client to a radio, if you own a Flex 6000 series radio, all of these clients work, and that's because we have an open API that not only third-party developers but our own software development team uses to interface with the radios, and we use an open standard called Vita 49 to handle all the stream management that comes out of the radio and gets consumed by the client. So most computer, it says the last 3 years. I know people are running our product on 10-year-old computers that they're just more than powerful enough. You don't need a big hefty PC. Again, for digital mode processing, you may need additional processing power. So looking at the Maestro, one of the cool things about it, it really is like a portable control head. So not only do you get the user interface and can use our unique way of displaying spectrum and waterfall and slice information, you have hardware interfaces as well, like a keyer. You can add a powered speaker. You can add headphones. You have a PTT line. You can add different microphones. In fact, you can have a couple of them. And this will also work with over Wi-Fi, or you can wire it directly using Ethernet. So it really is kind of the ultimate radio. It's very thin. You can use it in motel rooms. In fact, I carry one with me when I go traveling with my wife, and I have access to my station from just about anywhere. As long as I have internet access, I have access to my station. And that remote ability is something that comes free. You don't have to pay a nickel extra for it. It's part of the way that our software works. It's called SmartLink. We have a service up in the cloud that will map your radio to your station. We don't charge you anything for the service. You can basically just register your radio on it and use it. Now, the 64, 66, and 6700 models, these are the contest grade transceivers that we have. Again, SmartLink is free. The current version software is included in free, and you can use any previous version if you want. So you can go back to 2 or version 1 if you wish to do that. All clients can connect. Multiflex is included. Now, multiflex is a concept I haven't introduced here. Multiflex allows more than one user to access the radio. That's really handy if you have a buddy, or I have a grandson that is learning about ham radio, and he can just he can just download the software on his PC in New York, and he has access to my station here, and I can Elmer him from remote. I just get on the phone with him and walk him through using the radio. So he can operate my radio from his dad's laptop in Fishkill, New York, which is just really cool. And that again comes free. Controlled envelope SSB is something I mentioned earlier in the presentation. That gives you a much more impactful single sideband signal. It uses you end up with effectively 3 dB more signal from your single sideband, and this is not a compression technology. This is controlled envelope, and that is something, if you can, I think recently there's been a few articles about it. It's something we've had in our radios from day one. And then you can add any external audio device control for amplifiers. So each radio has a USB port. So you can plug a USB hub into that, or you can plug USB devices into it. In fact, there are 2 USB ports on each of our radios, and that can interface with an amplifier or a filter. It can run RS-232 CAT, pin to band, or BCD. All of those are available to you on the radio, and it's virtually unlimited by using the hub. And here's an example of it. So you can plug in a USB to serial device, connect it up to your stepper, or you can use it on a KP500. One of our amplifiers use the LAN for interconnectivity. You don't need to use the serial for that. There are advantages to that. I can talk more about that in a different presentation. You can have multiple devices connected simultaneously. And if you need to connect software that uses these kinds of devices, our virtual serial port technology, CAT, that runs on the desktop, allows you access to like band change information, or they can control the frequency of the radio or the mode. Anything that they need to do is there. And here's kind of a more accurate description of the controlled envelope SSB. It generates SSB without the big overshoot peaks that make using something like ALC necessary with conventional single sideband modulators. It is more of a limiter than it is a compressor. But with it, you can look at your watt meter and you can see that it's reading higher on peak to peak values because of it. And the average is an increase in 2.8 dB. And you can read about it in 2014 issues of QEX, and there's some examples of it on YouTube. This is one of the areas where Flex Radio really shines, is that connecting your station all together. If you have multiple different components, you need different kinds of cables, control cables, PTT cables, RF cables. With the Flex system, it is primarily done in software. So, when you do need to use an external connection that comes from the radio, you can plug directly into the radio. You don't need to jump through any, hoops with serial cables, excuse me, with serial cables or hubs or anything like that. With less cables, you have less RFI issues. Most anything that we sell, like our 403A antenna devices, will work directly with Flex Radio. You simply just type in the IP address of the radio, and it communicates with the radio and self-configures. You don't need to be a computer engineer. You don't need to have a degree in computer engineering. You don't need to have special cables made or ordered when you're using our products. So when you build a Flex Radio system, the radio is kind of the central hub of the whole thing, and it's like a star design where the radio is connected to a switch, your computer is connected to the switch, the Wi-Fi could be connected to the switch, your internet is connected to the switch, and this allows all the devices to communicate with each other. You don't need to have any specialized cables to do that. This is the CAT program that I mentioned. This looks kind of complicated, but it really is straightforward. It's if you're used to using a virtual serial port technology, which I'm sure some of you are, it is identical to that with some added value or value added stuff. For example, you can choose to use a TCP port instead of actually going through a virtualized serial port. what difference that makes is really kind of minor, but it doesn't require a Windows driver to do that. It simply connects over the internet. There's, you know, OLTP devices that you can define here. You can define, you know, things other than just a CAT interface at the other end of the wire. And we do smart things like saying which process is connected to. In this case, everything says none. But if you were running something like Ham Radio Deluxe, or if you were using another third-party product, you would be able to see who's using that port here in this interface. Logbooks, contest loggers, FLDigi, WSJTX all make use of this interface, so you don't have to jump through technical hoops and, you know, string cables together and build Ys and all that stuff. You can do that all here in software. SO2R is another big feature, and single operator 2 radios means that you know, you virtually have 2 radios, 2 amplifiers, 2 tuners, 2 or more bandpass filters, station controllers, antennas, and lots of customized cable. Here's one example of an SO2R radio using 2 Kenwood TS590s, S's, and all of the different PCs and everything that goes with that, the tuners, the amplifiers, whatever. This is a very effective way of operating if you are a single operator, but you have quite a complex job ahead of you getting your station enabled for that. This is what a flex radio station, SO2R station, looks like. And this is a, you know, basically a little pistol kind of contest grade station with the 6600M or PGXL amplifier, the tuner, a switch, and the Antenna Genius, which allows you to share up to 8 antennas with this one radio, but you can operate it in SO2R mode, meaning that you can have one you know, slice up, and it can be on the same band, but just using different antennas. There's only one transmitter at once, but of course you're just a single operator, so you can't be transmitting more than at, you know, one at one time on the radio. So quite a bit less involved than the previous slide. And then there's a whole bunch of cool other add-on programs that hams primarily make using our open API. FR Stack's ability to plot SWRs. Slice Master, this is a program that makes it really brain dead simple to get things like Ham Radio Deluxe and WSJTX all to work together. It senses where these things are installed and then preconfigures them, so you don't have to go through all of those menus figuring things out, logging, etc. For digital operations, both CAT and DAT replace hardware operations in a regular station. I've said this before, you can interface direct to the software programs like WSJTX, DM780, FLDigi, and more. The Slice Master can help with all the interfacing. So here's an example of Slice Master. Just you kind of set up what programs you want to use, and it will automatically even launch them when you start Slice Master. You don't even have to worry about double clicking on them. The DAC software, this is the digital audio exchange software. This is what takes a slice receiver, turns it into audio, and presents it to other applications for them to use. So this is interesting. This is the wide noise blanking. I've shared my audio here. I hope it's loud enough. It's not. If not, just give me a second to tune it up. But this is an example of our noise blanking technology here. Let me start it. You can visually see the difference here.
WB2KAO, we can barely hear. Let me turn the blanker back on.
Yeah, real good, Mary. Just got off the bike, and I thought, well, let me check in with you here for a minute before I go up and get in the shower. We got quite a bit of
All right, so that shows you a pretty effective noise blanker. Pulled that guy right out of the mud. Oh. Now I got to get beyond to the next slide here. Hold on. There. So another common myth is that you can easily overload SDR receiver. In fact, there's a really great presentation from Gerald Youngblood, our CEO, our former CEO, but one of the brains behind the radios that talks about how it's virtually impossible to overload an SDR, and overload a signal for anything more than maybe a microsecond. So it really gives you some amazing dynamic range. And if you get a whole bunch of really strong signals on the band at one time, you can pull them out. And you don't need to worry if you had. I think he simulated 100. In the video, he simulates 100 40/9 signals on the same band, and he shows you mathematically how it's not going to overload the receiver and allow you to it allows you to use it. In fact, I think we have some video here of something like that to show you here. One of the knobs that we have that gives you some control over what you hear is the AGCT, or the AGC threshold. So it gives you the ability to set effectively the AGC knee at a point where it's useful to you. And we have a method that you use to set that. And it's quite honestly one of the more effective noise mitigating features that the radio has. You set it with your ear, and as band conditions and noise levels change, you may have to reset it, but it's the thing that gives you the full dynamic range. I have a presentation that I've given that talks about that almost exclusively. So here's an example of it here. I'm going to play this video.
See it? I'm about here. In fact, I'm right there. That little green dot is my lightning map receiver. And here's the storm right over Lake Huron coming into Georgian Bay. And you can see a bit of stuff going on here. So we'll get rid of that. So let's turn on the audio, and I want you to just listen to what we're hearing here. Okay. My AGCT for 80 meters, let's see, is way too high. Let me turn off my audio. Or we'll turn this down. If I adjust my AGCT just down, you'll notice it gets really quiet. But you go, I'm not going to be able to hear anything. Let me turn this. No, I'm going to turn this level up to normal level. And we hear that click. And that's the Fast Attacks Dual AGC. Click on, click off. I'm at medium, by the way, not at fast, not at slow. So how does that translate if you want to listen to a couple of guys? There's a net here on 3755.
1718. Anyway, the one went into the silo, died from the gas. The other one went into, seen his brother floundering there, went in, and he died too.
So you'll notice we can hear, that's my buddy Chad, speaking, just rag chewing about whatever. And plain as day, sort of like the winter on a quiet day. Yeah, it's not perfect, but man, it's easy to listen to.
Similar story. Silos are nothing to mess with. Matter of fact, a lot of people put signs on the doors, especially up high, not to get in there. And that's a shame. Thanks for sharing that with everyone. It's VE2HOG, and he's a farmer, so he knows what's going on. This is.
All right. sometimes you don't know what you're going to get with these.
See it, I'm about here.
Let me stop it here. All right. All right. So now this is a going after a satellite. Here, I think we have time to show this. This is kind of cool. So he's using Q5 signals transverters now at 430 megahertz and 2 meters. So I'll let this play here.
And Jono, I guess it's something you need to do, but boy, you hate to do it. Oh, there goes that new radio, Peter. Probably about 5, 6 of them, Jeff, over. Yeah, roger that. And I was just thinking I'm doing a lot of part-time work, and I'm thinking maybe I could afford that 7300, but with the roof coming, no, not this year. Okay. I'm surprised you don't have one already. I got an old IC 7410 that I really like, and I got a 99180 here, and I like it too for portable.
All right. Okay, so HF remote operation. So I mentioned that this is very simple. It comes free out of the box, available to it. Does not require VPN, which I won't get into all the issues that you have to go through here. Mike lists them for you. With SmartLink, VPN is not required. You don't need to have any specialized configuration that's plug and play. It automatically sets your router up. It works on 95, 96% of all routers. If not, if you have a specialized router, you have some commercial router, then you may need to poke a hole through the firewall to allow for it. It provides TLS level encryption. So everything is encrypted. There's literally, unless someone breaks TLS encryption, there's no way that anybody's gonna hack you or understand actually what's going, what information is being transferred. There's operator security because we're using OAuth as a mechanism to log in it truly is seamless, and it operates like a SIP server where we maintain a service in the cloud that will actually connect your client and your radio together, and all the remaining communications is peer-to-peer. So it's not going through a cloud. We don't get to see any of the communications. We don't know what you're doing. We have no way of knowing what you're doing. So it's true peer-to-peer, and it's included with every radio free of charge. And with multiflex, you can have up to 2 clients at the same time. You can do it inside your house. You can have one on the internet, as I described with my grandson. You can have 2 people in completely different parts of the world access the same radio. And here's a chart of our radios and the various feature sets that are included with them. The 6400 model comes with 1 SCU. The ATU is optional. The M models have the front panel display. 6400s allow 2 slices. They have 1 transverter and port and 1 RX antenna port, and the pre-selectors filters are 30 dB pre-selector filters. We have 55 dB, contest grade with the 6600, which ups the game, gives you up to 4 slices and 2 SCUs. But the ATU is included in that particular model. Our PGXL and linear amplifier products. It's been around now for about 2.5 years. It's one that I participated in the engineering of. It's really 2,000 watts of amplifier. It will do 1,500 watts, that kind of loafing around. It has something called MEFA, which is unique to the Flex Radio amplifier, and that it looks for the maximum efficiency based on the mode and frequency that you're using, and will reduce the drain voltage so that you get the maximum efficiency out of the LD MOS. That in turn reduces power a little bit, but you can increase power, but then you're operating at maximum efficiency, and that is important to some people, especially people in Europe. It has something called the harmonic load. There's no other amateur amplifier out there that does this. The filtering in this, the low pass filters are really diplex filters, and rather than reflecting the high frequency components or harmonic component energy back into the LD MOS and amplifier circuit, it siphons that off into a separate 400 watt load that is on board, so that it can be dissipated directly there in heat, and that saves all sorts of mischief inside of the amplifier. And we have both amateur and OEM configurations for that. The Tuner Genius XL is the companion tuner for the PGXL. It covers 1.8 to 54 megahertz, up to 2,000 watts. It will tune greater than 10-to-1 SWR, although I don't know why you would ever want to operate on a 10-to-1 antenna, but if you ever need to, this will help you do it. It will integrate with any transceiver, not just a Flex Radio product. It comes in a 1x3 or an SO2R model, and it is really seamless. It's one of the fastest auto tuning tuners I've seen. The longest that we've clocked it searching for a tuning solution, I think, is 12 seconds, and then it remembers the solution that for that frequency, and then will recall it within 20 milliseconds. It has some extremely accurate SCR and power meter measurement circuits in it, so it's better accuracy than most commercial power meters, including some of the ones that kind of sit at the high end of the pecking order in terms of meters in the market. And it again will work at 100% ICS duty cycle like the amplifier. This particular equipment, just to make sure there's no misconceptions, is made offshore. It's made in Montenegro, but it is seamlessly interfaced with the rest of our products. So you literally just need to hook up Ethernet, power, and coax, and you're done. The software licenses in our products don't expire. There is no annual license fee. There's no STR RF overload. You can do CW and digital remotely. It's not complicated. You don't need a powerful PC, and you don't need a computer for voice or CW modes, just a Maestro or an M model. So we have a ton of resources available for you. We're active on Facebook. We've got, I think, 4,000 members up there. We have a community of that we manage, where people can ask questions. We have a lot of Elmers up there that will help new people get started. We have or answer whole bunch of questions. We have lots of experts up there. We have a help desk. That's a function that I manage. And we have lots of documentation. We have a YouTube channel that has over now 50, I think it's 60 help videos that come, give it to you either long or short bites. So you can kind of choose your information no matter what your appetite. If you have a question, you can send email to us. We have a direct number, and we also take trade-ins. We deal directly with our customers here in the U.S. We don't sell through distribution. In Europe, we sell through distribution, and Canada, we sell through distribution. So that's it. Woo! I made it through there.
Very good. Little background. How long the company's been around? I can remember for quite a while.
18 years.
Okay, because I can remember the earlier ones, like the 1500 and like the little
Right.
paperback book sized.
Right. Now, those were the ones that you needed firewire.
Yep.
Right. And all the processing occurred on the PC.
Oh, okay.
Right. So that's where we learned about how to make sure we move the processing into the radio, because as you added capabilities to the software, you actually had to lean into what the compute power was available to you on the PC.
And 18 years ago, that wasn't as much.
No. And and you end up with a lot of variety too. You have no way to control quality.
Exactly. All right. Anybody else have questions?
I have a question. This is John.
Okay.
Hey, John.
I'm still not getting the point on what you mean by slice.
Oh, okay. Well, let me show you what I mean by slice. So this is my, you all gonna have to close your eyes and not remember the version number of the software that I'm using right here. We're testing something we're about to go to release with here. So, all right. So here's 40 meters. All right. Let me make this bigger so that everybody can see that. So,
Is that actually a running radio?
yeah, this is a running radio. This is on my antenna here at my shack. So this is this pan adapter is what's being brought into the front end of the receiver. In fact, I can zoom way out here. There you go. Now you're looking at everything from like DC up to 14 megacycles. And this is all being captured at one time. These are all the the different signals. This is a broadcast band over here. I don't know what the heck this is. 4 megahertz, 5 megahertz. That may be 60 meters. Here's some shortwave. Here's 40 meters. Where's 3.5? Down over here is 80 meters. There's 30 meters. There's WWV-ish somewhere in there. Looks like we got some 11 meter stuff happening, and there's we're getting up into 20 meters right there. So this is what an SCU is looking at right now. One of the SCUs on this radio is looking at that. All right, when I zoom back in to this little flag thingy that I have, that is a slice. It is a slice of spectrum. Now I'm going to add another slice here, create slice. Now there's another slice. This happens to be on the same band. Doesn't necessarily have to be on the same band, but it is something that that will decode, will receive a signal. Does that help, John?
So that's like having a second radio? Is that the significance?
Well,
of
this
the
is like
slice?
having another slice of the same spectrum, right? It's not, this is going through the same antenna. And now if I wanted to look at a completely different antenna, I can do that up here. Let me switch to a different antenna port. All right. Now this slice here is, although you can't see it, is receiving off of a separate antenna port, and it's usually better to. You notice that that because I am using a spectral capture unit, it does matter. What spectrum I'm looking at. Let me add a whole new pan adapter here. All right, and I'll make this one down here antenna 2. All right, and then I'm going to change bands here, and I'm going to go up to like 15 meters. So here I'm looking at another antenna that's connected to my, another antenna that is connected to my radio antenna. I'm using the second antenna port. This is using a completely independent slice spectrum. So if I remember, I zoomed out, did a big zoom out here, and I'm looking at somewhere between 14 and I'm looking up 10 meters here, and up here, if I zoom out again, I'm looking at, right now I'm looking at almost 30 megacycles of spectrum here. The lower half is here. The upper half is here, using 2 separate antennas, 2 separate spectral capture units. The slice is, I have 3 slices. I have 2 slices on 40 meters, 1 slice on 15 meters. It's a slice of spectrum. And things I can do with a slice is I can say, okay, I want to do digital decoding, which is DigiU, or I could make this AM if I wanted to, that's AM, or I could make this FM if I wanted it to be an FM, do FM decoding. I can tell a slice how to decode that slice of spectrum.
That sounds pretty significant. Being able to modify the decode, that's kind of a great thing.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like having multiple receivers. I'm using 2 antennas, and I have 3 receivers going right now. I'm receiving 3, different things here. I could take this one to like, let's go to 10 megahertz here. Actually, let's go to 5. There's WWV. Then I have this is another, so I have slice B here is on looking at WWV. And if I go back to 40 meters, you zoom out. So you can see that there's both of those slices now looking at a much broader piece of spectrum.
Wow.
I can add another slice here, or I could add another. Now, here's another really cool thing. All right. So this is what you're looking at, is one of the reasons that I got into SDR, is that I can do all of this stuff, right? But where it really shines is when you're working on when you're trying to receive something. And let's say that there was someone that was adjacent to me. Well, this is a fairly good case. Let's say that this person right here was creating interference here. I have something called a tracking notch filter. Let me turn on tracking notch. All right. So now I've created basically a brick wall between, I'm not going to hear that at all. So anything behind, anything from this, in this little gray area, and I can create as many of these things as I want. Here's another one. I'll put another one here. So, so that's that's creating basically a hole in the spectrum, with brick, just brick walls. You're not going to hear anything on either side of that at all, or in the middle portion of that.
Wow.
Is your radio able to automatically filter out wall wart noise?
Well, so that was, I was showing, some of the, I mean, thankfully I don't have that kind of an issue here, but I've spent a lot of time with ferrites making sure I don't. Our noise blanker is, you saw an example of how good that is in the DSP. We have noise reduction that's very similar to what you would see on an audio. To be honest with you, I think we could do, there are more effective algorithms that we could implement for noise, such as hash that's coming off of a wall wart or something. And that nice thing about it, it's software. So that's something that they could add. And we do have plans to add more intelligent noise canceling. I wish I had sometimes I wish I had an XYL noise canceller, right? So
No. So are your radios forever upgradable with the software?
Well, I mean, forever is a long time. It's a really long time, but the current radios have been produced in production since I want to say 2012, 2014. So 8 years. And we're still adding features to them.
That's pretty good.
I don't want to dominate here, but I do have one more question. When you're mentioning the remote control capabilities, iPhone kept getting brought up. Are you pretty much connection agnostic? I mean, Android okay, or is it all iPhone?
Android, I don't think there's a client, although I understand someone's working on one.
That's a good answer.
All right. Anybody else have any other questions? Well, then, thank you very much, Dan.
You bet. I either put everybody asleep or they're
this is
silent.
This is fascinating, and I mean, yeah, when you can see all of it there, and then it's just, and what you can do with it once, because once you capture that, then it's just manipulating bits.
It's like moving it from like copying a file.
Yeah, well, it's like my audio production stuff over here for Newsline.
Yep. Perfect.
Once it comes off the microphone into Pro Tools, I can do whatever I want with it.
That's right.
So, all right. Well, thank you very much for, you did a fine job. Don't let them tell you otherwise.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And I really appreciate it. I will, this video will be up in the next couple of days.
All right.
I'll put the links to all the stuff in that slide. I'll put that in the description.
All right.
And we will go from there. So
All
thank
right,
you
Paul,
very
thank
much.
you. Gentlemen, thank you. Thanks for your questions, John. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah. Awesome call sign, John. Like that.
Yeah, they keep saying back to you, so that's why.
That's right. Okay.
Exactly.
All right.
All right.
All right. See you later. 73 fellas.
Good night.
All right. Yeah. Good night.
Hey.
Good night.